Hello, U.S. history students. Well, we finally made it. We are ready to start World War II. I know this is a lot of people's favorite unit, okay? So we are finally ready to start World War II, and that's what we're going to look at today in this lesson, the beginnings of World War II. Now, I've tried to make this simple. I've tried to break it down, but there's a lot going on here at the beginning of the war. First off, you have two theaters, okay? You have the Atlantic Theater, or Europe, and you had the Pacific Theater, or Asia. So there's stuff going on in Europe, there's stuff going on in Asia, and to top it all off, you have this other entity out there, namely the United States, which claims to be neutral, but is definitely watching with concern the actions of the Axis powers. So we got to talk about the United States and all this as well. By the way, the next lesson that we're going to look at specifically deals with the US and goes into a little bit more detail about everything the US is doing at this time period. Okay. As you listen and as you watch this lesson, be sure you are taking notes down. You can take your own notes if you want. I highly suggest that you use the chart on Canvas to fill things in because I've tried to keep it orderly there. So feel free to use that. And there will be a little quiz on this material also this week. So be sure you review all that for the little quiz. All right. So let's start with Europe. Okay. Now, the reason we start with Europe is, to be honest with you, a lot of people pay attention to the European theater. Plus, you have this figure here, Adolf Hitler, who has come to power, and he is going to be kind of the driving force for the Axis powers, not just for the entire Axis powers, but especially the Axis powers in Europe. So everybody's interested in Europe and everybody's focused on this guy, Adolf Hitler. World War II will officially begin in September 1939. Hitler is going to invade Poland from the west. And when Hitler invades Poland from the west, that is when World War II begins. Now, we've talked about this in class before. Hitler had begun doing things that Germany wasn't supposed to do at the end of World War One. Like he'd begun raising up armed forces and raising up an army. Of course, Germany had lost its military after World War One, and he had begun to push into land that Germany had lost. And the Allies basically were kind of just shaking their fingers at him and saying, "Hey, you shouldn't do that. That's not right. You shouldn't do that." But they're not backing it up. And the League of Nations, which is supposed to have stopped this as well, has no army and has no U.S. support. So they don't have any power to stop it as well. So when Hitler finally invades Poland from the west, the Allies are like, okay, that's enough. We're at war. And World War II begins. Hitler is going to use a tactic called Blitzkrieg. Blitzkrieg means lightning war. Now, it's a combination of tanks and planes. To be honest with you, what you do is you send in your planes first, and you bomb the enemy, okay, and surprise them. And the idea is you shake things up enough from the air, you cause enough destruction on the ground from the air, that then you move your tanks in, and it's fairly easy to secure an area, okay, because it's already been destroyed by these massive bombings. But it's real fast. It occurs with an element of surprise. That's why it's called Blitzkrieg Lightning War, okay? It's a quick surprise attack. You bomb a lot, you shake things up, and then you send in your tanks in to finish the job. When Hitler invades Poland, Britain and France will officially declare war on Germany. Okay? That's why September 1939 is considered the official start of World War II. When Britain and France declare war on Germany, the Soviet Union retaliates and invades Poland from the east. Okay, so they're going to take territory from the east. Remember, Stalin, who's the leader of the Soviet Union, and Hitler, who's the leader of Germany, have signed a non-aggression pact. All right, it's not like they're full allies, but basically they said they're not going to attack each other. And if they need support, they could turn to the other for support as well. Okay, so when Britain and France declare war on Germany, Soviet Union decides to get involved and invades Poland from the east. Okay. In August 1940, Hitler is going to continue this quest. He's trying to reclaim land that Germany lost from the end of World War I And I've told you in class, he's also looking to conquer land that has any German-speaking people living on it. So after Poland, he goes after Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg. Okay, and he's going to conquer all of those. All of those will be conquered countries in April 1940. In May 1940, he turns his attention to France. Okay, and he's going to invade France, which will cut off the two big allied nations at this time from each other. Okay, the two big nations at this time are France and Great Britain. And when Hitler comes in and invades France, that's going to cut France off from Great Britain. Also, the Italians, led by Mussolini, decide to join the Axis side. They're going to join Germany. They're also going to attack France. Okay, so Hitler's coming in from the east. Italy is going to come up from the south. And between the two, they're going to force France to surrender in May 1940. Okay, now Hitler's got a non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union, so they're kind of out of it right now. He's friends with Italy. He's taken over all this land. Now France has fallen. Who's left? I love this cartoon right here. Okay, notice who the dentist is. A. Hitler. Look at all these empty seats, and you can see the hats up here is Czechoslovakia, there's Poland, okay, Denmark, Holland, France. There's only one guy left. Notice who it is, Britain. Okay, Britain's the only allied left. And here comes Hitler, and his hands are all dark, his hands are bloody. He's got these pliers in his hand that are bloody as well. But notice what Britain's doing. Britain's got its own set of pliers, and Britain is rolling up its sleeves, which gives you an idea of what Britain is about. In August 1940, Hitler attacks Great Britain from the air. Okay, going to be hard to do blitzkrieg because Britain is an island. Okay, so we're going to send in all these bombs. Okay, we're going to send in all these airplanes. There are all these air raids night after night. London is bombed night after night. Okay, they have to practice blackout drills where they put curtains over the window and they use black paint and things like that so that no light shines in Britain at night, okay, to give targets to the German bombers. But Hitler thinks it's going to be successful. It's been successful everywhere else. It's been successful in France. It's been successful in Poland. It's got to be successful in Britain as well. But just like in that cartoon, Britain's rolling up its sleeves. Britain is not going out without a fight. And Hitler is not successful in getting Britain out of the war. Okay? This constant bombing is known as the Battle of Britain. All right, the Germans attack London by air, but the British get their Air Force, the RAF, the Royal Air Force, in the air, and they fight back. Okay? So all of a sudden, Hitler has met a challenge. And we talked about this in class too. You know, Hitler had said, if anybody had challenged me, I would have backed down. Now, whether or not we can believe that or not, I don't know. All right. I think he would have kept going anyway. But now he's being challenged. And all of a sudden he decides, okay, I'm going to leave Britain alone for a while. And in August 1941, he stabs Stalin in the back. I love that cartoon as well. You can see Hitler there with a knife stabbing Stalin in the back. He turns on the Soviet Union, invades the Soviet Union, and violates that non-aggression pact. And of course, when he does that, Stalin says, all bets are off. I'm joining the Allied side now. And that's in August 1941. Now, while all this is going on, stuff is ramping up in Asia as well, specifically with the nation of Japan. Japan is controlled by Hirohito, okay? And the actions of Hirohito in Japan are causing concern around the world as well. In the 1930s, Japan becomes very, very militaristic. It builds up its military. And to be honest with you, Japan has decided that it wants to be the dominant power in Asia. So it begins taking steps to show the countries in Asia that it is in charge and to show the rest of the world that it is in charge. So Japan invades and brutalizes both Manchuria and China. And again, this is because they want to be the dominant power in Asia. Okay, Japan wants to be the dominant power in Asia. Now, is everybody going to be happy with that? Certainly not. One of the countries that is looking with concern at Japan and what Japan is doing has fought really hard to be able to trade with China. In fact, this country instituted the open door policy with China. And that country is the United States. Okay? So you got Hitler over in Europe invading all these countries. Hitler has now stabbed Stalin in the back. Okay? That non aggression pact between the Soviets and the Germans is done. In Asia, Japan is becoming very, very militaristic. Japan is starting to take over countries because it wants to be the dominant power in Asia. And now here comes the third piece of the puzzle. We're just going to briefly introduce it here. The United States. The United States is watching both of these theaters with concern, but it is more concerned about what's going on with Asia. Now, once again, the United States, for the first 2 years of the war, 1939 and 1941, claims to be neutral. Okay, it claims to be neutral. However, in July 1941, the U.S. is going to protest Japanese aggression. And it puts an embargo on exports of oil and steel to steel to Japan. Okay, an embargo is when you cut off trade and when you cut off supplies to a country. So we had been sending over oil and steel to Japan. Guess what Japan has been using to militarize? That oil and steel. So we say we don't like what Japan is doing. So if we cut off the oil and steel, Japan can't militarize, which means Japan can't take over all these areas in Asia that it's taking over. Okay? So we're going to cut off those supplies and we're going to cut off trade with Japan, and that will teach Japan a lesson. Of course, how's Japan going to feel about that? Not too happy. Notice July 1941. What happens in December 1941? Pearl Harbor. The tensions between the Axis powers, specifically Japan, and the United States are going to begin to rise. And on Sunday, December the 7th, 1941, the Japanese will bomb a United States naval base in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. And they will deal us a very, very serious blow. And we are going to begin to rethink this stance of neutrality. Okay? Now, there's much more involved with the U.S. because, again, while we claim to be neutral, we are definitely doing some things that aren't neutral. Then we get attacked on December 7th, and all of a sudden this idea about neutrality goes out the window. And that's what we're going to pick up in our next lesson, U.S. entry into World War II.